Welcome to the Market Mystics podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody. Welcome back.
Welcome back. I think we did it again. I think we had a brief moment of who's starting this.
We did. It just, I think it's just going to happen. We need to just establish it. The listeners probably have no idea because I'll just cut out. I'll just cut out the pause in the beginning.
The pause just isn't there for the listeners, but it is for us. That's fun.
That's right.
All right. Well, today we have a topic that came to my mind during the last episode we recorded. And I sent Kim a message. I was like, hey, let's talk about this when we record next. And it's the concept of momentum. And I'm trying to think of like a good way to like preface the overall thought that's going in my mind. So I have heard people talk about two different ways of like working with the Father. And one of them is it's easier for him to steer a ship that's moving rather than get it moving from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is like, and there's some biblical stories for both of them, but the other one is like, I'm going to sit and wait until I hear him tell me to do something. And so it's interesting because I've been in a moment of my life where I've mostly been waiting, I would say. And recently I was like, okay, I want some things to be different. And I don't exactly know how to do that. So I'm just going to start doing things. I'm just going to start making decisions and moving and then seeing what happens. And I wanted to like have a conversation over this topic with you and just see like what your experience has been with those and what your, like, if you had like thoughts or stories from your life. Because I just think it's interesting. Like, and I can go into more details, but yeah, it's like in the moment I was just like, hey, I want something to be different. So I'm just going to start doing stuff. And if God wants to change that, then we can. But I'm just going to start moving and see what happens.
Sure. My initial question is, because you gave the two examples of like waiting versus steering a moving ship or redirecting a moving ship.
Right.
But is waiting like, is it the same as being non-moving? Is it the same as being still?
I don't think it has to be, but I definitely think you can express it that way.
I think that's true. I was just thinking.
So for the purposes of my thought, I'm going to polarize them as the opposites.
Okay. So being still or being in a movement one way or another.
Yeah.
And being redirected.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know there's nuances to both of them. Like you can be patiently waiting while still moving down the road, and you can be moving down the road and not listening at all. So like, I know there's nuances to both of them.
Sure. Sure. I was thinking even of waiting, like, I think sometimes when I'm in a waiting period, sometimes I'm still, and I've shared before that like one of my best focus tools is to hone in on the scripture, be still and know that I am God. Right. And that's how I really can get into a place of focus and being with him. And so I absolutely think there's value in being still. But sometimes when I'm waiting, it's almost like I'm stirring still. Like, I don't know, like when a car is idling, it's still on and ready to go, but it's like it's stirring, the engine's still going, right? And so I was just thinking about that, and that's kind of why I asked that question. Let me think about some momentum things. First of all, I have to say, I feel like we're coming into a time of momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of a sudden, things have started moving when they kind of had just been stirring. I don't even know that they had been still.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like ignored and turned off. It was stirring. It was just not yet go time.
Mm.
So it feels like there's some momentum. Things have started going, and I would say in all kinds of different ways. So in business, in family stuff, in friendship stuff, in podcasting, both here and on other platforms as well. I don't know. I think there's a lot of stuff that's kind of starting to go. And I think that's really encouraging because I'll be really honest. I've had a good, like, I've come to the end of a waiting time for like 3 years. Like TikTok, it's been exactly 3 years today. And finally things are starting to move, and that feels like relief is what it feels like.
When we get to the bonus, I'm going to give some like really detailed explanation of what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But yeah, I think like I felt very similar. I was like, I need something, like I've been feeling this shift and I need it. Like I started longing for it. Like it's like the anticipation got so high that I was like, okay, I'm just going to step into something, like we're just going to do this. And I think it's really intriguing because I think both methods can be super valuable depending on where you are. And I think the polarity aspect of it is good in my thought, because maybe if you've been in one, you got to shift to the other for a moment.
Yeah.
So like if you've been waiting in a still type of way, then maybe you got to get something going to like really create something. And if you've been going, maybe you got to pull yourself back and still for a minute in order to really feel it. I hear people talk about this like a lot with like fitness, like comes to mind, like, oh, I need to go to the gym. I need to go to the gym. I need to go to the gym. And then it's like something happens, like a new month or the year starts and they're like, okay, I'm gonna go. And it just like almost you need like that catalyst to like jump into something to create that spark to move on. And not everybody who does it because of that, has lasting change. But I think you can use that momentum, you can channel that momentum into something if you are aware of what's going on. Like if you can, I think you can learn to alchemize the energy of what's going on if you're aware that it's there.
I think you're so right. And I was just thinking also in terms of health. And I think this is especially relevant because we're just coming off of this interview with Arun, and he essentially biohacked himself out of autoimmune disease. Like, although I know that he doesn't.
And then biohacked himself out of biohacking.
Right. Like, but I have like, I guess a personal anecdote too with this. So I have also dealt with some autoimmune issues. I'm very careful about the language I use with it because I actually don't want to call it mine. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that that's actually how I was built, was to have this. So I'm dealing with this stuff. And when actually it was 5 years ago, I had this kind of breaking point of like nothing was working. Doctors didn't know what to do. They just kind of stopped giving me any kind of options, which kind of really sucks. And like, there's also this disappointment. But then I also had to really shift my source of supply. You know what I mean? Like, was I really relying on these doctors to solve this issue that was happening in my own body? And my sister, Christine, um, the ever wise one, she was like, well, did you ask the Lord what to do? And I was like, no, of course I didn't ask the Lord. Why would I do that?
Right.
I would tell anyone else to do it, but for myself, I didn't. And then I did. And through that, and it was through the relationship. I'm going to be really specific on this. And I think Arun talks a little bit about this too. And like both of the times we've talked to him on the show, but I wouldn't say it's prescriptive like across the board for every person on the planet, but through my relationship with him, he kind of gave me steps of what to do and how to start healing my body. And it wasn't just like one thing, it was like multiple things stacked on top of each other. But in regard to momentum, so I've been doing that for 5 years. And then all of a sudden, in the last probably about 6 months, things started reverting back. And like what I was doing and what the Lord had told me to do over all that time, it like, it felt like a relapse. You know what I mean? And all of these symptoms started coming back, and it was kind of really crazy. And for a minute, because I had been in that momentum and I was no longer going in the like on the same trajectory, it felt like a tailspin a little bit. And but recently, and it was actually just, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, I had more conversation with the Lord about, I mean, I've been asking him about it, but I really kind of had this conversation, and I decided to include my body in on that. Like, I was like, okay, let's, what do you need? And it was different, but I will tell you, there's now momentum. It just was like redirection, and it was steering the moving ship that might have already been in a tailspin. It was still moving though, but steering it like in a slightly different course. It's not actually completely different, but it's just a little more honed in. It's like tweaked. And I'm really, really looking forward to kind of working with that and working with my body, because it's like what my body's craving. So I don't know. That sounds really vague. I know it's really vague, but it's because, okay, listen, when all of this started, people would ask me, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then they would take it and try to do it themselves and then not see the results that they thought they were going to get because they were looking for one certain indicator, AKA weight loss. And that was something that was prescribed to me. It was very like Kim specific because it came through the relationship I had with the Lord. And it wasn't, this is what all of humanity should do. It was, this is what your body needs now.
Yeah.
And so I'm really careful about putting out there like the specifics of what I'm doing, because I don't want anyone to take it and bypass that relationship piece. Because I think that's the most important part about this. And even with momentum overall, is the direction and the trajectory all needs to be like fueled and steered by the relationship you have with the Father, the relationship you have with Yeshua, that relationship with the Holy Spirit. And that needs to be what's propelling, right?
Yeah. 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 No, I think it's life has to come from relationship. I think. I mean, it doesn't have to. You can choose to do it outside of that, but I think it's better if it does. Um, yeah, and I think part like what's in my mind is like, okay, like God gave you an exact word about do this, but then He didn't say, okay, stop or
Yep.
change, but all of a sudden it wasn't working,
Right.
which like pushes you back into relationship to be like, hey, what's going on?
Time for a checkup.
Yeah. And I think that's like, yeah, I think that's a big part of like what's going on in my mind is like, hmm, are you waiting for God to reach out and say, hey, did you notice that wasn't working? Or are you going to Him and saying, hey, this doesn't feel like it's working. Do I need to shift?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think there's something in this too. And I don't know, people might not like this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think there's something about receiving a word from the Lord, and sometimes you want to keep that, hold that, and think that it will never change.
Mm.
And I think that circumstances change and other people make decisions that don't line up with that specific outcome. And I think it's really important to check back in with the Lord because He might need to redirect a little. And I think that's okay. And I think that it's really important to be able to hold what He's told you, like know that it's truth, right? But also be willing for Him to course correct.
Yeah.
And don't say, no, no, God, but you said we're not doing that. So I'm sticking to that thing. Because if that's the case, then the Israelites would still be in the desert, you know?
Yeah.
And
Mm.
there were some of them that wanted to stay, like not move on. They're like, no, but we're fine. This is okay. This isn't so bad. Is it not so bad, or is it, or do you want to see the promised land? Like, would you rather mediocre or would you rather fullness?
And are you willing to go through the wilderness? Are you willing to leave relative comfort to go through the wilderness to get to the promised land? This makes me think of like that book we talked about a few episodes ago, about how people who create generational wealth
Hmm.
make choices for deferred gratification, basically. That's choosing the wilderness to get to the promised land.
Right.
Like immediate gratification is just saying namaste in Egypt. They've got everything I need.
Right.
Hmm. Sometimes the hard choice is important to make.
It is. And sometimes you do have to go through the hard stuff to get to the promise,
Hmm.
you know?
Or it feels that way. Like,
Sure.
one of the things we also recently talked about was like how every happy moment you can see negative things in it, and every negative thing you can see happy parts in it. And it's like, kind of just depends what you choose to focus on. It's not it's like you could be in the wilderness and choose to focus on the good parts of it. And it doesn't discount the fact that you're in the wilderness,
Right.
but you could also be in the promised land and complaining about what isn't working. Like you can choose where your focus is. And I think that's been depending on what realm of faith you came from. Like there's some people who are like focused so heavily on the good that they ignore, they almost like, I don't know the right word, not ignore, but like put anything that's uncomfortable like under a blanket, like sweep it under the rug and ignore it. And somewhere there's a balance of, no, this is really what I'm going through in life, but I'm focusing on the parts of it that are going the way I want it to. And I like that shift can be huge in mindsets. That can change the wilderness for you.
Yeah. It's so true. This is good. This went somewhere I wasn't expecting, and I was good. This is good for me.
That's good.
Thanks, Josh.
You're welcome.
He's a good friend.
Even unintentionally.
Okay, guys. You know what? You should go sign up for the membership because we're gonna have some bonus content. Josh is gonna spill the beans, spill the tea. What is the saying? Like, it was spill the beans for a long time.
Spill the tea is like gossip.
Oh, what kind of spilling?
I think spill the beans is more like a secret, right?
Okay. Yeah. Well, what are you spilling? What are you going to spill in the member only area in the bonus content?
I don't know. I don't know if any of it's like a secret or gossip. It's just life. And if you want to know more about life, you got to go spend $1.99 on YouTube.
Okay, but then you'll get the bonus content from like a bunch of these interviews and other extended conversations and things that are like other big conversations with other people. Like,
what we're trying to say is head over to YouTube on your desktop, click on any of our videos, click on join, and check out some of our videos. Check out some of the bonus content that you don't normally see.
True. Yeah. Okay. We'll see you over there. Thanks for joining, guys. Hey, thanks for listening. Keep up with us along this journey by liking, subscribing, and becoming a member through YouTube.
Members get exclusive access to bonus content with our guests, deeper dives into topics, and a look into other projects. We're glad to have you here. See you next time.